Hey, what's happening? This is Jeremy, curriculum developer here at the Foundry Kids, and I'm playing with my phone to show you a little video. We're going to talk about how to lead a Eureka lesson. And this one is going to be the older and younger elementary ages. In a couple days, we will talk about the preschool, the Eureka Junior lesson. Oh, hey, look here. Here's the Eureka theme song. You can get it at the Foundry Leader or foundryleader.com. We'll talk more about these resources as we go today. Just wanted to give you a second to jam out. Super cool. All right, let's jump in. We're doing this at 11 o'clock so that we can get done before lunch and you can celebrate knowing how to lead a Eureka lesson with a great, big, amazing lunch today. So like I said, we're going to walk through an elementary lesson. Older and younger are very similar. For what we're going to do now, I'm going to use the older elementary. But as we go through, I will point out some of the differences between the two age levels, so you'll be aware of those. Primarily, I think I'm going to use the sample lesson that's available online. There'll be some times when I grab things from other lessons. So if you don't have the actual curriculum in front of you, you can go to eurekacurriculum.com and get a sample lesson to follow along. Otherwise, grab your stuff and we'll walk through this together. Let's just start with this right here. This is the leader's guide. So once you start a quarter, you'll get one of these. And before we actually dive into how a lesson works, let me just walk through the pieces of a lesson. Just starting right here with the cover that comes on your leader's guide packet, okay? Inside the cover, you have a little scope and sequence that walks through the quarter right here of all the passages that you'll be studying with your kiddos. Remember, we focus on each Bible passage for 2 weeks. And then on the back of the cover, we talk a little bit about Savior, King, and Friend. This is a way to talk to kids about salvation and what that means and how to become a Christian and what it means to live as a Christian and not a relationship with Jesus. And doing that by using the language of Savior, King, and Friend. So we give you a little explanation on that on the inside cover there. Then, this is a super important piece that comes in your leader's guide packet. This is the how to lead a Eureka expedition. So before you start, you want to read through this. If you have a substitute fill in for you, you can give them this piece of paper or you can shoot them the downloadable PDF via email, which you also get when you buy one of these. So you can just email people lessons as you need to. On the front cover here is something that we talked about a few weeks ago on Facebook Live, are the 5 foundations of the Eureka curriculum: discovery, deep hermeneutic, participation, confidence, and koinonia. I'm not going to go through those, but you can read those or you can check out that other video from a few weeks ago. Then on the inside, we are going to spend some time here today on the inside. This talks about all the pieces and all the elements of a lesson. All right. So the first one, we kind of talk about some words. The first word to know is expedition. This is just our fancy word for a lesson. So anytime you see the word expedition, you just know that that means a lesson, a curriculum lesson. 2 weeks, like I said, we spend 2 weeks on every Bible passage. The next thing on here that you need to know is discovery guide. What is the discovery guide? A discovery guide is what your students, what your kids will use as you explore in your expedition. It looks like this. So the leader's guide looks like this. What these kids get looks like this. It's got the big, giant, awesome picture on it. And each week, that picture changes. See, super cool. So that is the discovery guide. We'll go through that in a little more detail in a second. So that's a discovery guide. leader's guide, which I just showed you, and we'll piece that up in a little bit. The word discovery, this is also called a faith discovery sometimes in the curriculum. This is the little nuggets of learning or the spiritual truths or the things that kids will walk away with at the end of a lesson or at the end of an expedition. Things that they will remember, things that will transform them and disciple them. We just call these faith discoveries, and these are very important. You're going to put these on paper at the end of every lesson, so we'll talk about that in a second as well. Another word you need to know is My Discovery Relic. All right, there are two types of relics where we record discoveries in Eureka. The first one is a My Discovery Relic, and this appears in every single discovery guide. It's right here on the back of the kids' discovery guide, right here, this big, empty, blank circle, and will only be empty until the end of your expedition. Then each and every kid will write in what they have discovered that day while they explored during their expedition. That's where they'll write their faith discovery. Maybe they'll draw a picture, or they can just write a sentence of what they want to remember, of what was important to them, of how they grew spiritually. That's where they'll write it, right there on their very own discovery guide. That's a My Faith or My Discovery Relic. That's a word you need to know. The next word is class relic. This is the thing that we pointed out last week on Facebook Live. It's something you're going to work on together as a class. So as a class, you'll decide, all right, what's an important thing we want to remember as we've been exploring the last 2 weeks? What's something from this passage that we don't want to forget? And as a class, you'll choose one, and you'll write a picture, or you can have someone in your class write a picture or draw a few words, or you can do it yourself. And you'll write one faith discovery on here to represent your whole class. So then what do you do with it? That comes to the next word, the relic wall poster. These big, giant things behind me on the wall. You'll take your class relic and you will get to put it on this poster. This is the older elementary poster. This is Sir Neil's relic wall, and he's got empty shelves, and you'll pick one of those empty shelves, and that's where you'll put your relic wall. We will do that in a second once we walk through the lesson, all right? So that's the relic wall poster. This one is the younger elementary. This is inside Nicky Knack's headquarters. So those are the relic wall posters. The next thing on here that you'll need to know about, is Sir Neil's Journal of Feats and Braveness. On the front cover of every discovery guide, we get started with a fun little exploring story from one of our characters. Older elementary learn about Sir Neil. He's an amazing explorer who has a best friend and exploring sidekick, Alpaca Pam. That's her covering it in purple pudding. How did she get covered in purple pudding? You're going to have to read it to find out. So we do this at the beginning of every lesson. It's just kind of a fun icebreaker, something to get kids in the exploring mood. Sometimes each week we'll use a word from the Bible story or a word that they will have heard somewhere in the Bible passage. Is just kind of a fun little thing to discover in the story. So that happens at the beginning of every story. Nicky, younger elementary, also have one. Their journal is called the Nicky Knack's Gritty Journal of Adventuring. Also right there on the front. Okay, so that's what it is when we talk about a journal or an exploring journal. Those are from our characters. The remember verse. The important thing about our remember verse is that it helps us remember why we are exploring God's Word. We want to see who we are to God and who God is to us and our relationship with Him. And so we want to remember that. We remember why we explore. And it's great to memorize this verse, to learn this verse. So the remember verse, it's the same verse for a month. So you get 4 weeks to remember it, to explore it, to memorize it. We'll talk about some fun ways that you can do that as we go along today. So that's what a remember verse is. One thing that's unique to Eureka is the Eureka Bible passage. We want every kid to have the passage in front of them as they explore. Some kids don't even have Bibles at home, so we want them to be able to take home the passage they explore. And sometimes we explore big passages of Scripture. Stories can be very long. So what we've done is we condensed the stories into sort of an abridged version, and we put it in each student's discovery guide. We call it the Eureka Bible Passage. And it's just basically a scaled down version of the story. Now sometimes we can almost print it word for word here because it's smaller stories, but most of the times it'll be abridged in some way. So that's basically what that is. We use different translations of the Bible to get as close as we can to the text and get it right in there. Kids get to take this home with them. You'll use this as you explore for different activities, so this is super important. That's what the Eureka Bible Passage is. Obviously, you can also use your own Bibles or the kids' Bibles, but we wanted to provide that for everyone. Eureka CD and DVD, we talked about this last week when we talked about the expedition resources. So that's what these are. We'll talk about how to use those as we go through today. You also get the posters in that expedition resources as well. Tell it. What is a tell it or a tell it method? This is a way to retell the story in class. There's about 8 or 9 different ways that you can retell, and kids will act out or recreate the Bible story. Those are tons of fun. We'll dig into that in a second too. So that's what a tell it method is. Index cards. One of the things we've tried to do with Eureka is make it super simple for teachers so you're not constantly having to gather up a bunch of different supplies. So all you need to teach with Eureka is a discovery guide, a leader's guide, the expedition resources, a few classroom basics, pencil, markers or colored pencils or crayons, whatever you want to do. The only maybe kind of weird thing, I don't know if it's weird, is index cards that you might need from time to time. Sometimes we use them for games, or sometimes we'll use them for some of the tell-it methods. So it's a good idea just to have a stack of index cards in your class that you can pull out whenever you need them. Other than that, you won't ever need any props or any amazing things that you have to go out and find. Try to make it super simple for you. So that's index cards, and then finally, these are the 5 whats. Remember, we've talked about many times, these are the 5 questions that we ask as we explore God's Word. What's that word? What's happening in the passage? What's happening in the Bible? What's this say about God? And what's this say about us? Each week we use 3 of these 5 in our lesson to explore. And those are them, and it kind of gives an explanation of those. Those 5 things are what the kids will learn as they move through Eureka, so that they can learn how to read the Bible and study the Bible and be formed by the Bible on their own. And finally, FoundryLeader.com. You'll see this throughout the Leader's Guide. It'll give a little reference that says, hey, check out FoundryLeader.com. You can find all kinds of cool stuff. Like I said earlier, downloadable PDFs, so you can shoot lessons to teachers if they need to fill in at the last second, or if you want to teach from your tablet rather than have something printed, you can just pull up the PDF on your tablet or whatever. You can download all that stuff from Foundry Leader. The videos can be streamed from there or downloaded from there. Lots of cool resources. So that's what that is. You will get a password that will get you the information that you need. So those passwords appear in your leader's guide or on the front of the DVD. So once you buy those, you get access to FoundryLeader.com. All right, so that is what is on the How to Lead a Eureka Expedition. And then on the back is kind of an outline of what a lesson looks like. And that's what we're going to do right now. We'll just kind of go through a lesson from beginning to end. Okay? Just kind of walk through it, tell you what's going on. I know learning how to teach something new is tricky and intimidating, and it's a little scary. It makes us take deep breaths, but we can do this together. I promise you, we've thought long and hard as a children's pastor forever and ever. So there are always times I was thinking to myself, I wish the curriculum had this or this, and I would talk to my teachers and they say, why can't we do this or this? And so we've tried to listen to those voices. We've taken surveys, we've tested different things, and we think you will love this after you give it a couple weeks and soak into it, and you'll learn the routine, and it's going to be great. So let me take a drink of water, and then we'll dig into a lesson. All right. So like I said, to start, all of your kiddos will get one of these. This is a discovery guide. And you will need a leader's guide. You'll know you've got the right ones because the picture on the front matches. See that? Leader's guide, kids guide. Awesome. So the first thing that happens as kids are coming into class, there's lots of different things you can do. We've got 3 or 4 different videos that you can play from Eureka. You got the Eureka theme song, the 5 What song. You've got Savior, King, and Friend song. You can have those playing as kids are coming in, either on video, or you can play the CD, so there's just some music playing in the background of those songs. Getting to know your kids, greeting them as they come in. You can have these sitting out on the tables, so older kids can go ahead and start reading this on their own if they want to. They can start digging in. They can even go to the back where it says keep exploring, and they can start working on some of these activities. They're going to take these home at the end of class, and they can do these at home, but some kids are overachievers, and they'll want to get started on this as soon as possible, so that you can do that if you'd like to. Then to get started, that's when you're going to bust out the Journal of Feats and Braveness or Nicky Nack's Journal of Adventuring, and you'll read this together. Either you can read it to everyone, or what's even more super fun is on the CD or DVD, you can listen to Sir Neil himself tell the story that's right here. So you'll pop it in, go to the week 1 that matches this, hit play, and you'll be able to listen to Sir Neil tell this story. Same thing with the younger elementary. Nikki will actually tell her story. So you guys can do that together. Listen as a class, get everyone's attention together as a class. Just kind of a warm-up, fun way to get in the exploring mood. Then we'll start the first of 9 official steps in an expedition. So there are 9 things, and you even get little check boxes here that you can check off once you accomplish those. Don't you love to check things off a to-do list? Yes, me too. So the first thing to check off is the remember verse. Remember, let's see what I did there. We study this verse to remember why we explore. There's a couple ways that you can look at the remember verse. One, you can start by listening to the song, put the verse to song so it's easier to remember, or a video. You can pop in the DVD player and play the video. Kiwi, our little green exploring friend of Nikki, has many cousins, and he and his cousins sing those remember verses. All kinds of different styles. They are lots of fun. You can see samples of those at eurekacurriculum.com. Put those verses to music. You can watch those as a class. Then after you watch it, you can each try and see if you can remember the verse and say it back. If you don't have a DVD player or a CD player, like I was doing earlier, you can just stream it from your phone, or if you want to put it on your tablet, you can play it from there and just bust that out. Now, there's different ways. We got a question last week of how long it takes to teach a lesson. I've been in Sunday school classes where we have it 45 minutes. It's not much time, but there are ways to make this just last 45 minutes. I've also been in Sunday school classes where we have to fill an hour or more. And so there are also ways to make this last a little bit longer. And one of those ways is during the remember verse. If you need to add some extra time to your lesson, or if your kids are a little wiggly, and you want to give them a chance to get out their wiggles and their energy at the beginning of the class, we've given you about 7 or 8 or 9 different activities or games to play to help you learn the remember verse. And those are at the Foundry or at foundryleader.com. We don't put them in here to save space, but just go on foundryleader.com, pound in your password, and you can pick one of those 7 or 8 games. They just take 5, 6, 7 minutes, or play it as many times as you want. And that's a way to add time or let your kids get out some energy. And it's also a great way to learn the verse and to study the verse. So that's the remember verse. Once you do that, you get to check off step 1 of your expedition. Boom. All right, step 2 is what's that word? So we have given you 3 words to explore and to learn. Remember, the first exploring question is, what's that word? When we look at a passage, we don't go any further until we understand at least the basics of what all the words mean. So we're giving you a head start, and we're teaching the kids 3 different words to help them prepare to explore this passage. Now in the Leader's Guide, we've told you what the words are, but the kids on their discovery guides, we give the definition and they have to decode to figure out what the word means. So we give them little symbols, and they use the official decoder down here to figure out what each symbol means and spell this word. Now you can do this together as a class. They can pair up and they can work in pairs of 2 or 3. They can do this before you even come to class. So if you have these sitting out on tables, they can come in and start decoding the words. Then when you get to what's that word, you can just spend your time reading each definition and talking about those and see if kids have any questions about those. So that's what that looks like. This is one of the ways the older and younger is a little bit different, okay? So I showed you what the older looks like. They have to decode the entire word. The younger kids, since they aren't so super awesome sometimes with the reading and the writing, they will just decode 2, maybe 3 letters per word. And then sometimes they will also have different words. So older kids may have a little bit more complex words or different things like that. So sometimes the words are different, but the decoding process is different for sure. We don't ask them to do the entire word. It's one of the things we learned as we were trying different things out with our testing group. So what's that word? And then by doing this early on in the lesson, once you read the Bible passage, kids will come across these words and they will have confidence because they now know what those words mean. And so when they read the passage, they will feel good about that. Oh yeah, I know what that word means. We just studied that. Sometimes these words also come from the remember verse, because there are words in our verses that are sometimes a little tricky as well. So sometimes those words come from there. So you will spend some time decoding those words. Do a quick recap with everyone, make sure everyone understands what they mean. And then, if anyone has any questions to clarify, you can certainly do that as a teacher, help them understand that. Check off number 2. This usually takes 5 minutes or so, depending on how you decode the words, if you do that together or if you do that ahead of time. You can also give kids a chance to look at the remember verse, see if there's any other words that they don't know. All right, once you check that off, you're going to number 3, peaks and pitfalls. So once we've done some hardcore academic exploring, we're going to chill out and we're going to have a little friendship time. Change gears a little bit. You're going to go around the room. You're going to give kids a chance to share their peak of the week. That's something awesome that happened. And give them a chance to share their pitfall of the week. Something that was not so awesome that happened. And you can pray for those. You can make a list of those and ask kids about them the next week. Peaks and pitfalls. So this is just kind of a time to give every kid in the room a chance to share their story, what's been happening with them, give you a chance to get to know them a little better in a way that's built into the curriculum to remind you about that. And then at the end of this, you'll be able to pray together. You can share prayer requests, although a lot of times you'll learn what some of those prayer requests are by just having kids tell you their peaks and pitfalls. So this happens every single week. So you'll pray together, and once you're finished praying, you'll move on to step 4 in the expedition steps, all right? Step 4, right up here. This is called Hear It. Now we're going to jump into our primary Bible passage of the day, officially with step 4. What's going to happen is, for the older kids, you're going to invite them to have a seat. They can sit on the floor, get somewhere where they can listen well. You're going to read the story to them. We're going to have an adult read to them. Same with the younger kids. You're going to read the story to them. If it's a shorter passage, you can read it straight from the Bible. If it's only 3 or 4 paragraphs, however long you think your class can listen, you can read it straight from there. Or if it's a longer passage, you can read from the Eureka Bible passage, which is inside your discovery guide, or your leader's guide, excuse me. So kids are going to quiet themselves, and they're just going to listen. Listen to the story. Let it come through. You'll probably read it twice. Let them really soak it in and hear the basics about it. Kind of a time to catch their breath. Then once they do that, that's super simple. You're going to check that off, and you're going to move on to number 5. Now it's your time to jump into the story. You're going to have some fun with the story. You're going to enjoy the story. You're going to tell the story. So in Eureka, we give you 2 tell it methods. This is a way to tell the story. So for this week, we have 2 methods. One's called So Much Drama. So Much Drama. And the other is called Word. And as a class, you will vote on which one, or you can just decide on which one you want to do as a class. Now let the kids decide, because we want them to participate in the lesson. This will be a lot of fun. All right, so you guys get to pick which one of these 2 you want to do. So Much Drama appears every other week. It always appears on the first week that you'll be studying a passage. It's a lot of fun. I have done this method over 100 times. Kids love it every single time, and it's super simple for adults as well. So Much Drama is basically, we give you a script where you'll act out a fun reenactment of the story, and it can get a little silly at times. All it means is, all you have to do is, you'll have a leader read the story, and you'll pick 3 or 4 kids. So this story needs 4 actors, and you'll pick them, they'll come up in front of the class. There's no preparation, there's no props, they don't memorize any lines, you don't prepare them in any way other than to tell them who they are. So in this story, we need someone to be God, we need someone to be power, we need someone to be creativity, and we need someone to be skills. And so you'll ask for volunteers, they'll all raise their hand, you'll pick them, you say, okay, you're going to be God, you're going to be power, you're going to be creativity, you're going to be skills. So listen for when I call your name and just do whatever it is that I tell you to do in the story. And then, as a leader, you just read this story. God got his power, creativity, and skills by his side. They high-five each other. It's time to create. They all huddle up. Then you'll wait for all of them to huddle up. They sway back and forth. Then you'll wait for them to sway back and forth. And they say, let's do this. Then you wait for your actors to say, let's do this. And you'll just read through there. See that? No memorization, super easy. Tons of fun. Once you do this once, when you bring it back, your kids are all going to want to do it, because they will realize that it's fun, that there's no pressure, that they don't have to memorize anything, they don't have to be awesome super actors. So that happens every 2 weeks. There's about 8 or 9 telemethods that we will use, and that's it. We'll pick 2 every week to suggest that you use. And by only using 8 or 9, after you do these for a couple months, you will know how to lead every single one of those telemethods. So when you see this title, you won't have to go try to find the instructions on how to lead it. You'll just know. You'll see word, oh, I know how to do that, and you can jump right in. That's one of the things we've done on purpose, so you aren't constantly having to learn a new skill set. You'll love it. So at first, you'll be like, ooh, word, how do I lead that? I don't remember that one. We put the instructions for how to lead each one on the back of your leader's guide. So Much Drama and word. So you'll have those, but they're pretty simple. So like I said, after you do it a couple times, you will have it down. You will feel like a master teacher, a master explorer. Okay, excellent. By the way, word is one of those where you sit in a group and you retell the story, where each kid tells one word of the story. And you just go around and start retelling the story, each kid taking a turn to tell one word of the story. So it's a fun way to retell the story. Now, online at the Foundry Leader, we give you all 8 or 9 tell it methods. So if you don't like the 2 that we suggest, you can print out that sheet and you can pick one of the ones that your class loves to do, your personal favorite. If you guys want to do the same method every week, go for it. You can totally do that. All right. So that is step 5. And before we move on This is also one of the ways that you can make your class longer or shorter. If you know that you're going to have to fill a lot of time, then you can do both tell-it methods. You don't have to just do one. You can do two of them. Or you can do so much drama 2 different times. If you have a big class and lots of kids want to participate, you can pick new actors at the end of the first time and just read through the story with a new set of actors. So that's another way you can add a little time. If you've got to fill more than, say, 50, 55 minutes or so, you can do that. So once you're done with that, like I said, tell-it methods, there'll be times to laugh, times to be silly. It's just kind of a fun way to get into the story and start learning who the characters are, learning the basics of what happened in the story. This is part of the what's happening in the passage. There are some laugh times. We don't mess with the story too much. Just enough to give you some giggles, but not too much where it doesn't make sense. So that's tell it. Then, after we've done all that amazing, high energy, fun stuff, we're going to move to step 6. And we're going to take a breath. And we're going to lower our energy level. And this is called embrace it. Now, this is a quiet time. Now, some kids may not be used to coming to church and having quiet time. But it can be super important and impactful. Here's the way it works. You finish the tell-it method, kids go back to their seats, and for the older elementary kids, you're going to give them 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, where they're just going to quietly read the story to themselves. They'll get back into the Bible passage, so they'll transition from the fun, sometimes goofy, tell-it methods to the Eureka Bible passage, and they can just read this for themselves, word for word, study it. Maybe they'll circle things that are curious to them or that stand out to them or they want to ask questions about. Or they can also, like I said, read it from their Bibles if it's a shorter story. Now you may have to start doing this with just, let's say, a minute. Because if kids haven't been used to doing this, it'll be a little weird at first. So it's totally cool to just start, all right, we're going to do 60 seconds of quiet. And we just want you to read through this story on your own. They're not going to read out loud, so if they aren't great readers, nobody will know but them. So there's no pressure. You're not going to quiz them about it afterwards. It's just between them and God, just a personal time for them to focus themselves and have some time alone with the scriptures. And you can add more and more time, like I said, to this as you go. I've done this as well, giving kids quiet time. Okay. Now with the younger kids, this is something that's a little bit different for the younger kids. Oh, that's a student guide. Younger kids, we suggest a shorter time segment, but then we also, obviously they're not going to read it to themselves. They might. There may be some second graders that are great readers, or first graders even that are great readers. But it's just a time for them to reflect on the story. And you can read the story to them and let them listen if you would like to, or you can just have a quiet time, 30 seconds, where they can look at the picture. I forgot to mention that inside each student guide there's a picture of the Bible story right there, and it's different for the older and younger. So your young kids can just look at the story and reflect on the story. And like I said, start 30 seconds, build up to a minute or two for younger kids. Not only does it give them a time to think about the story, but it's a time for them to transition from the kind of higher energy tell-it time to kind of the next phase of the expedition, which is discussion time. So a little lower energy part of the expedition. All right, so that is, let me find my leader's guide, okay? So that is step 6. Embrace it, embrace it. I'm going to backtrack real quick because I forgot the tell-it methods. There's 8 or 9. They aren't all drama. There's a couple that are, well, the word is kind of word-based. They don't act anything. They just retell the story. There's also one called Doodle Mix, where they will draw pictures of different parts of the story. So on the Eureka Bible passage, you can see, I don't know if you can see here, but there's different paragraphs that are color-coded. So these are black print, and this is blue print and black. And they will go through, and you will create a picture for each section of the story. super simple picture, and you'll recreate that. Then you'll mix them up, and then you'll practice putting them in order that they belong. So some of the tell it methods are kind of drama. Some of them are kind of artsy. There's one where they will act out the story to music, to classical music that we have, called Symphonious. That's one of the things the older kids do. It's a personal favorite, lots of fun. Okay, so that's embrace. I was tell it, then embrace it. Then we're going on to steps 7 and 8. So step 7 is where we're going to start our discussion time. You're going to ask questions and kids will answer. And this is where it's super important that we're following the curiosity of our kids, that we're listening to them, that we're asking open-ended questions, that we are trusting the Holy Spirit, we're listening to the Holy Spirit, and we're going to see where God leads us. The first set of questions will focus on kind of what's happening in the passage. It'll just kind of, sometimes we'll get into the kind of the nuts and bolts. So, for example, in this one it says, what happened in Genesis 1? Pretty simple. We're just reviewing. Like, what is actually going on here? Who can retell the story as it happened in the Bible? Give a chance for different kids to retell the story. A lot of these questions and a lot of the philosophies come out of the tell the story ways of discipling people. So I don't know if you've ever seen that method used. It's been floating around for a while, but tell the story. We use some of those philosophies in these questions. Next question on here is, if you could be there for one day of creation, which one would it be and why? So again, this is just a fun way to kind of recap what happened in the passage. So I'd like to be there when the plants were created, because I'd like to see how they grew up, how they grew, or how God decided which ones should be this color or which ones should be this color. Or some kids may say, I want to be there when the water animals were created, because I love water animals, whales and sharks and yada, yada, yada. Kids can share there. And the next question, what do you think the creation must have looked like by day 6? So now we're getting to use our imaginations a little bit, still kind of talking about what happened in this passage, letting kids voice what's on their mind. If all else fails, I always go back to what happened in the passage. You can just ask that, what happened in this passage? And you'd be surprised at how long you can talk with your kids by just asking that one simple question. So section 7 is what's happening in the passage. Once you finish those questions, you will come to 8. And section 8 is, what's this say about God? Before we learn any takeaways about what we need to do or anything else, we need to learn where God is in the story. What's this passage say about God? So, for this lesson, we have questions like, what does God do in this story? What does Jesus do in this story? Tricky question. His name isn't mentioned. Does he do anything? Where is Jesus when all this is happening? It's a good way to start talking about things like the Trinity and things like that, all right? Why do you think God decided to start creating? What do you think it means to be created in God's image? In what ways are we created in God's image? And what's this passage say about God? What's it say about him? Kids may say, it means he's all-powerful, he's the ultimate creator. That is true. Someone else might say, it means we are made like him. Like we are kind of similar to God. Can you believe that? That is also true. It could be, God created my favorite animal is an elephant, and I just learned today that God created the elephants. Also true. Okay? So what's this passage say about God? These questions in section 7 and 8 can also be a little bit different between the two age levels. Sometimes we'll add a little trickier question for the older kids than we do with the younger kids. So that's another way the two age levels can be different. Listen to your kids. If they are curious about a certain thing, keep asking them follow-up questions. Say, tell me more about that, or tell me more about that idea, or has anyone else been curious about that thought, or what do you guys think about that? explore things that your kids are interested in. It's okay to spend more time on things that your kids are showing an interest in. That's one of the reasons that we start Eureka by studying a passage instead of studying a topic. So at the end of the lesson is where you will sit back and say, all right, what have we learned? That's why we start with the Bible passage rather than saying, here's what you're going to learn, and here's a Bible story to prove it. Remember, we kind of flip that around. We say, here's the Bible passage, let's see what we can learn. And these questions are where those discoveries will start to reveal themselves. So what do you do with those discoveries? As you are talking, you may notice certain kids make certain discoveries, and it's a great idea to reinforce those. So if someone says, yeah, God created us, we're kind of like God, or God, there's some things about us and God that are the same. That's what it means to be made in His image. Then you can say as leader, that's a great discovery. That's a great faith discovery you just made. You should remember that for later on. Because the later on part happens right here in number 9, the last official part of the exploring time right there, number 9. This is where you record your discovery. Every kiddo in their leader's guide, or in their discovery guide, on the back has a blank relic. This is where each kid gets to write down what they want to remember from that day's lesson. What was my personal discovery today? Was it that God created the world? Maybe I had forgot that. Or maybe I was created in His image? Like, I didn't think God and I were anything alike. But there must be something that connects us. So I may write that down. Or maybe it's something from the remember verse. Whoa, I belong to God, like He created me. Like we're supposed to be together. So maybe I write belong on there. That's what I want to remember. I want to remember that I belong. So I'm going to write belong real big on there. And each kid in your class, they can write something different. So one might write belong, someone else might write, or might draw a picture of the world with like a big hand behind it, like God created the world. It doesn't matter. Each kid can write their own. Now, as they're doing this, you can walk around and help them figure out ways to articulate what they discovered. They may not know how to write it down, or they may not say, ooh, I don't know how to draw a picture of this. You can give them permission, just write a word. That's all you gotta do, just write a word. It doesn't have to be fancy, because this is theirs. They're not gonna put it up on the wall. It doesn't have to be amazing. They're gonna take this home with them to help them remember, okay? So that's my discovery. We also put one in yours as a leader. You've got one in there too. So as kids are doing theirs, do yours. Do you know God can speak to you while you're leading a lesson? What? No way. Yes. We as leaders, we want to learn as well. We are doing this together. Koinonia, together. We're letting God lead us as well. So, while the kids are writing theirs, we've given you space to write yours as well. Now, at the end, once everyone has done that, if you want to, if you have time, you can give kids the opportunity to share if they'd like to. If they want to share their relics, they totally don't have to. It's up to you. Then you're going to send them home, and when it's time to go, they will take this whole piece of paper with them, and on the back, there are a couple simple things that they can do at home during the week. There's a different little way that they will interact with the remember verse. So this little activity changes every week. They'll have their relic here that they can help them remember. Then down here there's the treasure chest. So they will look inside at the Bible story, and there are words from the remember verse hidden in this picture. So when they go home, they can circle those words, and they can read the journal entry again just for fun. It's a nice bedtime story. So they will go home with these. On the leader's guide, one last thing before we move on. On the back, there are expedition tips each week that change every week. So different things that we'll give you a heads up on. So make sure to read through those before you start a lesson. Now that's week 1. Then you go through and it's time for the next week of the same passage. Now, we're not going to do everything we just did. I just want to pull out a couple differences. While you do study the same passage, there are things that are different about it the next week. So, the next week, oh, here they are. Here's my leader's guide. The routine is the same. So you're not learning a new routine each week. You're still going to have a journal to enjoy. You're still going to kick off with a remember verse. Then you're going to do what's that word, but you'll have 3 different words. 3 different words, so the words will be different. They still get to decode them. You'll still do peaks and valleys. You'll still do hear it. You'll still do tell it, but this time we give you 2 different methods. Woo. So this week looks like we suggest symphonious or doodle mix. So you'll get to pick one of those. And let's say your kids really love doodle mix and you want to start doing that. Like I said, if you want to do the same one again, you can. You'll still do embrace it. Then you'll do what's happening in the Bible. Now, when we study a Bible passage, we don't just study that passage. We want to know what else is happening in the Bible that can help us understand that. So we will give you a second passage that you're going to explore for a few minutes. So this week it says, read all or part of Psalm 104, 1 to 34 to the class. And we have put that second passage, we call it a second passage, here in your leader's guide. So instead of the so much drama script, now you have the second passage, the what's happening in the Bible passage of Scripture. So while you're still primarily studying Genesis 1, you're going to take a look at Psalm and see how that helps us understand Genesis, the creation story. So you're going to study that. And you'll do that here through sections, you'll do it here through 7, and sometimes 8 we'll ask questions about the Psalm or the second passage as well. And so these 2 sections, 7 and 8, the questions will be different. Because during the first week, you'll be talking about what's happening in the Bible, or what's happening in the passage, but now you're talking about what's happening in the Bible. And then, at the end of the second week, that's when you come with the question, what's this say about us? Or what's this say about me? This is the what do we do about it? Or what do I need to do? And so we'll ask questions like, what do you think when you hear that you are created in the image of God? Or what sort of things can God do that we can do? Or how do we know people are important to God? Different questions that kind of focus on us and who we are to God. Then again, you'll be doing record your discovery. Kids will write down the personal thing that they want to remember. But you will also do a class relic. So every 2 weeks, you will get your relic. Remember, you got the poster that comes in your expedition resources that has a bunch of relics on there. You'll punch one out. And then as a class, you will decide, all right, let's think about the last 2 weeks. What is something that we as a class want to remember? And kids will probably name their own personal faith discoveries, and that's totally fine. You'll listen to those, and then you'll decide whether you want to vote or just talk, or decide what's one thing that we want to put on our relic. You could write the word belong for this week's. You could write a picture of the earth, or you could just write the word image of God, or anything like that. So let's see. If we're going to go with God created the world, maybe I'll draw a terrible little picture of a hand and the world. So maybe that's enough to help your class remember that God created the world. And you'll take that and you will tape it on one of the empty shelves here on your relic poster. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a picture. Maybe you just write something like this, the word belong. Or if you want to write whatever. So you'll pick one thing and you will put that on your relic poster, or Younger Elementary on your relic wall poster. And that's how you will finish the end of week 2. All right? And again, you'll send them home. Here's the back of the Younger Elementaries. So you still have the remember verse activity, blank relic. Younger kids also have words hidden in the picture, in their Bible picture, that they can look for during the week. They can tell their parents about their faith discovery. Their parents can see the actual Bible story they studied. Their parents can read the story with them, and parents can see the words that they studied, making it super easy for parents to know what their kids have explored and to have conversations. It's also easy because all the different age groups are studying the same thing. All right. Whew. We made it through a lesson. Nice work. If you have questions, put them down below in the comments. I will try to answer them, running through my head. Oh, as we were working through this, we want to invite you to join a Facebook group just for those using Eureka. It's a closed group, so it is called Eureka Kids Curriculum Teachers and Leaders. So type that into your Facebook search bar. It will take you to that group. You will request to join. You'll have to answer just 2 or 3 super simple questions, and then you will be accepted in that group. And we're kind of creating a Eureka community so you can share experiences that you've had in class, ask questions, or give ideas, say, hey, this is working super well, or this is working not so well, what can we do? And to just come and talk with other people using Eureka. So one more time, Eureka Kids Curriculum Teachers and Leaders. Type all that in, request to join. All right, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there, listening to me yabber on. 2 more days. On Thursday, we'll come back and do this again with Eureka Junior, the preschool, kindergarten age levels. That's going to be a lot of fun too. All right, until next time, have a great Tuesday.